and welcome to All There Is. I'm your host, Kelly Vargabas. It has been way too long since my last episode, but to be honest, I've been struggling with processing my current feels and figuring out how to put them into words. I had hoped to do a few more episodes on the ideal candidate. If you listen back to my last couple of episodes, I was really gung-ho on talking about our presidential candidates and giving my thoughts on leadership and what the ideal candidate should be, my thoughts on the next leader of our country. But I was still feeling hopeful then. I was still feeling hopeful when I recorded those episodes. I'm not anymore. I don't like it when I'm not hopeful. It feels unnatural to me, unsettling. And I finally figured out how to put it into words, and it's not good. Because when it comes to this election process and finding the ideal candidate, I am actually disenchanted, disappointed, and sometimes disgusted with this particular election process more than I've ever been in my adult life. And it is with both parties, with all parties, both sides of the aisle, everyone involved, from Trump to Harris to Kennedy, and all the ones pulling the puppet strings behind the curtain. I used to believe that my vote mattered. I don't anymore. I used to believe that the natural rhythm and natural cycle of our democracy protected us. I liked the balance of having a Democratic president and then a Republican president every couple of years. I always felt like it kept us centered. I don't anymore. I used to naively believe that our political leaders were public servants first and held the American values as their ideal and guiding compass. I never believed they were perfect. They're human beings. We've had a lot of imperfect and criminal presidents. But I did always think that they held our American values as their ideal and guiding compass. And I don't anymore. Maybe I'm just waking up for the first time. Maybe I've been a Pollyanna. Maybe I've had rose-colored glasses. But I feel like for the first time I am seeing in a new way and in a new scale the corruption, the greed, the power, and the puppetry that's happening. And it's partly because of the way the Democratic Party handled Joe Biden and that whole situation. Even back to when he was first elected, and then when he became the nominee and the candidate for this current election, I was already thinking to myself, this is their guy? This is the cream of the crop? This is the best the Democratic Party has to offer? This is the ideal candidate to win against Donald Trump? And then when it became super obvious and public and clear that Joe Biden could not serve another term, we were being publicly en masse gaslighted. I don't know if it's gaslighted or gaslit, but you know what I mean. They were telling us not to believe what we were seeing with our own two eyes until they got ready to make a move, and then they changed their minds. So just the way that whole thing went down was so icky and disenchanting, disappointing, and disgusting. I'm not a Kamala hater. I'm not a Kamala supporter. I'm indifferent. I don't believe she is the ideal candidate either. And when I tell people that, when I tell people I can't imagine her in the role of president, that I'm not convinced she's qualified, I hear, yeah, but you have to vote for her, otherwise Trump will get elected. And I refuse to vote for someone I don't believe in just because she's a woman or a Democrat or to keep Donald Trump out of office. I can't embrace an American election process that is not about finding the best person for the job, but just keeping out the other party. And I believe it's true on the other side as well. I was in shock when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, and I'm disenchanted, disappointed, and disgusted that he is still the Republican candidate that the Republican Party is putting forth. Like, what are you doing? Where is the best and the brightest and the ideal candidate for the job? What is happening? So it just became clear to me with the whole Joe Biden thing that there can only be one reason why the Democratic Party was so reluctant to let him go. And to me, it was clear that they were keeping him because they could control him. I think I'm going to have to trade in my Democratic Party registration for an independent, because that just, you know how when you're in a relationship with somebody and you kind of take a lot of toxic bad behavior over and over and over again, and then you get to a point where you're just like, that's it, I'm done. And that's where I've landed with the Democratic Party. And so then I got excited to Robert Kennedy Jr. And I know a lot of people think he's crazy, and maybe he is, but I was enchanted with him. Wouldn't it be cool if we actually had a third candidate who might be viable? And honestly, a lot of his ideals spoke to me. And then to see what the DNC did to prevent him from running in a fair election, I thought it was so un-American. To prevent him from debating, to prevent him from having airtime. They railroaded him. That also exposed to me a side of the Democratic Party that I didn't want to believe existed. Instead of fighting for his right to be in the election, they actually did everything they could, legally and illegally, to keep him out. This election process, more than ever, I really feel like we're seeing behind the veil, and that there is so much more going on than what we know. And again, I'm not naive. I've been around the block a few times. This isn't my first rodeo. I know there's a lot of corruption in politics. I know it's all about the lobbyists and the money. I don't know. To me, this year just became so blatant, so vile. Every day, the news media is gaslighting all of us on all sides. The people who tell you if you vote for an independent candidate, you're just giving votes to the other party, that is gaslighting at its best. Like, how un-American to tell me that I can't cast a vote for who I think is the best candidate. It's ridiculous, right? So all of that has kind of had me just, if I'm honest, feeling like just what does it matter? Like I said at the beginning, like I really believe that my vote doesn't matter at this point. But the real question is, and the one that I want to grapple with today with you is, what are we to do? What are we to do with all this gaslighting, this disgust, this disenchantment, this disappointment? How do we go on? How do we live our lives? What is a girl to do? What is a reasonable, intelligent, yet disenchanted, disgusted, and disappointed person to do with all of this? And that's what's taken me so long to figure out. Through my process of trying to make sense of it all, I was reminded of this message that I first heard in church probably 20 plus years ago when my pastor preached on the circle of control. I actually dug up my old notes, my old journal, and found the message and the things that I learned. And it basically boils down to this. If we think of our world, the world that we live in 4 concentric circles, and if you draw this on a page, draw it on a piece of paper, it helps to visualize it. So get out a pen and paper, old school, okay? Boomer style. Draw 4 concentric circles. That means you start with a really small circle in the middle, and then the second circle is a little bit bigger, maybe half an inch away, and then the third circle, another half an inch, draw another circle, and then the fourth circle surrounds all of those. So you have 4 circles from smaller to bigger. Now, what I learned many, many years ago was that first or outer circle, the biggest circle, is called the circle of cares. These are the cares of the world. And at the time I heard this message, again, it was 20 plus years ago, and took notes, I wrote these things down. These things were in my circle of cares: the economy, the future, politics, healthcare, violence and culture, crimes against women and children. These were all the things that I cared about, worried about, and wanted to change. Today, I think I would keep all those things, and I would add homelessness, corruption, AI, greed, and maybe weather. That is the circle of cares. And as the outer circle, this is the one I have the least influence on. Really, I have zero influence, no influence on these things. No matter how much I worry, no matter how much time I spend scrolling, no matter how much time I spend watching reels and so-called experts talking about these things, I have no influence or control over them. The second circle is called the circle of circumstance. And at the time, 20 years ago, I wrote my mom's health, my husband's job, my job, what my coworkers and boss think of me, my hair loss, my friend's addiction, all of that. These were circumstances in my life back then. They existed. They just were happening. They were facts. I couldn't change them. I couldn't change them no matter what I did. I had to deal with them. I had to deal with the effects of them, but I couldn't control them. And it's interesting to me. So 20 plus years ago, I was worried about my mom. She recently had surgery again. She's now 81. And I've been worrying about my mom and my dad's health for the last 3 months on a next level. Apparently 20 plus years ago, I was worried about hair loss. I'm glad to say I no longer worry about that. But yeah, all those things that were just keeping me up at night. Can't change any of them. The third circle is the circle of influence. These are things and people that are in my life that I care about and who care about me. Family members, close friends. My actions might have an impact, cause change, make a difference. There are actions I can take that can influence the situation. This is called the circle of influence. So in this circle would be your spouse, your partner, your kids, your parents, your family. These are people who might ask for your advice. These are people who might be inspired by your actions and what you do and what you say. They're watching you. So these are people that you might actually be able to influence, right? Influence, not control, but at least have an influence. My career, my husband's career, my family members, these are things that perhaps I can help with. One of the cornerstones of this podcast is how we help those in need. It has an everlasting impact and influence, right? I still can't control it, but again, I can influence. And I will say that the other thing that I'm really trying to learn, the lesson that I'm trying to learn is that even though they are in my circle of influence, I really try not to give unsolicited advice anymore, except for maybe my husband and my parents. That I'll give them advice whether they want it or not. But for my friends, my extended family, I really am trying not to give advice unless they want it. Finally, the most inside circle or the center circle, the smallest one, is called the circle of control. What lives inside this circle is the most exciting thing, the most rewarding, and the only thing I can really control. And at the time, again, 20 plus years ago, I wrote down my weight, my health, what I let in my body, my mind, my house. I can't control all the content that's out there. I can't control all the content that's available, but I can shut off the TV. I can close my screen. I can put away my phone. I can control who I spend time with. I can control my money, my spending, my time. I can control my spirit, my soul, my body. Whatever is in this circle is the only thing that should keep me up at night. This idea that if you think about your life in concentric circles, this universal truth should not disenchant, disappoint, or disgust you. It should give you hope, a plan, a roadmap, answers. I know it did for me as I was struggling with all these things I was feeling. It gave me hope about our world, about politics, about the news, about my life. This helped me. Whenever you find yourself upset about anything, politics, the news, a family crisis, map it on your circle map. Where does it fall? Is it a care of the world? There's nothing you can do. Absolutely. You can acknowledge it. Yep, this is a care of the world. It's heavy. I can't do anything about it. Write it down, put it in that big outer circle, and move on. Does it fall as a circumstance? Is it a fact in your life that's happening that you're dealing with the consequences of? Write it down. But if it's a circumstance, like we talked about and described, you can't do anything about it. So move on. Does it fall in the circle of influence? Is it related to something or someone that you can impact? Are they asking for your advice? If so, give it and then let it go. Finally, when you map it out, does it fall in that tiny little circle in the middle at the core of your life, in the core of who you are? Can you control it? This will tell you how much time and energy to spend on it. All the things that fall within that circle of control, that is where we need to spend our time and energy. In that inner circle is you, your decisions, your life, what you put in your mouth, what you read, what you allow, what you put into your mind, what you speak, what you say, what you do. This is the circle of your control. It's the circle of my control, and it's small. It's really small, and it's small for a reason. What's happening in our country right now and in our world is in that outer circle. Donald Trump Kamala Harris, Bobby Kennedy Jr., the November election, AI, P. Diddy, Israel, Hamas, all those things are happening in that outer circle. I can't control it directly. The only thing I can do is manage myself. And so in this time of hopelessness and chaos and disenchantment, disappointment, and disgust, the only thing I can do is focus on myself and what I want to do. I will cast a vote in November. I will not be gaslit into voting for somebody that I don't want to vote for. I'll write in a name if I have to. I will live my life regardless of what happens in the polls. I will live my life controlling what I do, what I say. And at the end of my life, that's all I have to answer for, is what I did in that circle of control. I don't have to answer for Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. When you're a leader of a nation like the United States of America, I believe they'll be called on to answer for what they did with their position. I won't. I will be called out to answer for what I had in my little circle of control. What I did, how I treated my husband, how I got up every day and served God, how I lived true to my values. That is what I will personally have to answer for. And that is what I will focus on. Yes, this time that we're in, it can be disenchanting. It can be disappointing. It can be disgusting. That is still true. That is a circumstance. None of that is my business. I'll vote. I'll continue to be engaged. I'll sign petitions. I'll give money. I'll treat people the way I think I should. That's all I can do. Many moons ago, I did a podcast episode, an All There Is podcast episode, with a woman named Afua Boheni, and we talked about changing the world. And she said something that has stuck with me ever since our conversation. She said something along the lines of, I'm here to love God and love people. And I hear her words often. That is in the circle of my control. I can love God and I can love people. Afua was onto something that day. Find what that is for you. There's a sign up in my office, a quote that I found, and I don't have it with me right now, but it says something like, I'm going to make everything around me beautiful. That will be my life. So those mantras, the one I just read you and the one Afua said, love God, love people, I'm going to make everything around me beautiful, that will be my life. Whoever said those things, they were on to this circle of control. They knew that they couldn't control the cares of the world. They couldn't control the circumstances in their life, but they could control these things. You can control so much, even though it's a small circle. How you spend your time, who or what you work for, what you spend your money on, how you treat your family, how you treat others. I'm going to leave you with the same thought I started this podcast with, and that is that I believe how we care for those who need help has an everlasting impact. I believe that if the basic needs of a person's spirit, soul, and body are met, it allows them the ability to keep their own corner of the world, their home, safe and prosperous for them and their family. This is all there is. This is what I birthed this podcast with, this sentiment, this thought, this belief. And in times when I am feeling disenchanted, disappointed, and disgusted, I need to center myself back to that. In 1986, Janet Jackson had an amazing album, and she had a song on there, Control. If you know it, great. If you don't know it, it's on Spotify, so look it up. Janet Jackson, Control. It's a great song. And she said, I don't want to rule the world. Just want to run my life. And that's the thought I want to leave you with. I don't want to rule the world. Just want to run my life in my little tiny circle of control. I hope this helps you. It helped me. Think about it. Godspeed. Thanks for listening and tuning in. You can listen to all past episodes on kellybargabas.com or anywhere that you find your podcast. Until we meet again, take care.